Kind of shocked when I see Aranda to UCLA possibilities.
Why? Like, why would you do that?
I don't think, and this is just me.
Are you out of your goddamn mind?
And maybe that's where we start the show, because I do want to get to this Texas Tech.
Maybe that's where we start the show an hour
Utah thing. Yeah, you know. How good a job is UCLA? Because the list of names is growing. I don't think Dave Aranda has a snowball's chance in hell. He has been so mediocre at Baylor. But you look at Jonathan Smith and Will Stein from Oregon, I think that's absolutely correct. If you hire Dave Aranda, come on. I think truly Garrett Riley, in my opinion, and I'd also keep my eye on D'Anton Lynn at SC. Those two names make total sense. Both of them can recruit Los Angeles and the West Coast right now. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see, because you hear all these names being thrown around. Like today, Deion Sanders, he's not leaving Colorado for UCLA.
No.
Stop it, right? I am telling you, that first name right there, Spencer Danielson, I think is a real candidate for this job.
Mm-hmm.
I think Spencer wants to be at the P4 level. I can't see, as I said yesterday, and since his name has been thrown around every single day, Kalani Sitake, I cannot see him leaving BYU for UCLA. Again, Tony White, I know he's got major ties to the program, but are you leaving Florida State to go to UCLA? That doesn't seem like a fit. Garrett Riley, I think D'Anton Lynn, I think Spencer Danielson are absolutely names that make a lot of sense. You know, like I just don't see Dave Aranda as a guy that I would hire there.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't.
Look, I think what this conversation comes down to is how much risk is UCLA willing to incur here with their hire? I mean, if you're not looking to take any risk at all, you're going to hire Garrett Riley, right? I mean, I think that's about as low risk as it gets. Proven guy with quarterbacks. He's in the age demographic, you know, obviously, ties with Lincoln, ties with a lot of great coaches in college football. So that's a pretty reliable hire, I would say. I also think that you start to look at some of the other situations. I mean, D'Anton Lynn's all right, I mean, not like solid, not like it wouldn't be number one on my list, but also isn't the worst candidate in the world. But I think for me, UCLA needs to find a balance. Like you need to find a guy that is an obvious choice that people are like, oh yeah, I understand why you hired him. But at the same time, you got to find someone who is young and in the mix and isn't, an old white hair. And I think that's what UCLA is going to have to kind of juggle here is like guys like Kalani Sitake and people who are established are probably not real excited about that opportunity, in my opinion. If you're already a head coach, are you really going to UCLA?
Yes. Yeah, I think you do. I think this is, and I've tried to really get a finger on the pulse of what the perception of UCLA is. I can tell you that I think if they were able to hire somebody today, it would be Kalani Sitake. I think Kalani is so universally respected across college football. I think UCLA would love to hire him. I don't think Kalani is going to walk away from BYU. That is UCLA a step up from BYU? Probably not a step up.
I mean, not currently, but it's how you look at it.
But it's Los Angeles. It is a chance to the glory of winning at UCLA in football. And if it is in fact true, and again, I've asked everybody around that situation, and the money is there now because there's been a real lack of resources in Westwood for football. That is apparently not the case. And I think they're going to spend huge in the portal. And I think the biggest question is, are they going to hire a defensive guy? Because it seems like that's what they want. I think they will make a hard run at Kalani Sitake. I think they will make, my guess is, I think their number 2, if I had to put a name on it right now, would be Tony White. And then I think Garrett Riley and D'Anton Lynn are 3rd and 4th, because I think they want somebody that can recruit Los Angeles and the West Coast right now. I think that is a major, major caveat to who they hire. And I think those guys all fit that bill. If you cannot recruit the West Coast, they're not going to hire you at UCLA. And there is no doubt, you look at all of their top targets, they all have the roots and the ability to recruit the West Coast. And D'Anton Lynn, certainly right now with what he is doing, I think that makes him an ideal fit. And the question that I most ask is, who do you want to be? What do you want your identity to be? If you want your identity to be enjoyable, dominating football offensively, you're probably going to hire Garrett Riley. If you want to beat people into submission with defense and you're going to allow them to hire a dynamic offensive coordinator, you're probably looking at guys like Kalani Sitake. I know factually, I've been told repeatedly, they want somebody that's got head coaching experience if they can get that. Because I think that's the interesting part of a Dave Aranda. I think that's the only reason that his name is in this. I think, you look at some of the other names that are out there. I don't know. I don't know that you can afford to take a risk on somebody like a Will Stein. Is Will Stein from Oregon a risk? I think he is, because he doesn't have measurable head coaching experience. I think a guy like Kalani, very low risk. You're going to win a lot of games. He's going to run a really clean program. He's going to recruit at a high level. I think he would absolutely leave BYU in a good spot. And I just don't think he'll leave BYU now. I think it's just the wrong time. And I think, again, my guy would be Kalani number 1, Spencer Danielson number 2, Garrett Riley number 3. Especially because it feels like, from what I'm hearing, UCLA wants defense. I think Spencer Danielson and Kalani Sitake, I think Spencer's got the biggest knock is he doesn't have enough experience and he hasn't been at the P4 level. I think that's a big deal, because you just took a huge risk on Foster, and look how much of that cost you.
Yeah,
look
but
how
I have
bad
to say,
your football program is.
Listen, I get that, but let's not sell Spencer Danielson short. I mean, say what you want, right? Not a P4 head coach. Totally get it. But the guy went to the college football playoff. Whether that was a gift or not, should they have been in? Should they have not? He got in. I mean, that's, and he's put guys in the NFL. Like, I think, see, I guess I don't know. Maybe I just see this a little differently. Like, I agree. I don't think Kalani's going anywhere. I just, the only way Kalani Sitake leaves BYU is if it's for a no doubt about it, once in a lifetime opportunity kind of job, in my opinion. Could be wrong.
If it was USC,
now we're having a different conversation.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
another name I heard that I just don't think will come out of retirement is Chris Peterson. My question is for Chris, and I don't know this to be factual at all. I think he's done coaching. Let's say Spencer Danielson got the job at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
Would Chris Peterson come back to go to Boise? I think that would be an awfully tough no. But it's not like he is young anymore. He had a really good run at Boise. He had a really good run at Washington. I mean, I think it'd be really difficult. I mean, he won Coach of the Year multiple times. He won the Bear Bryant Award multiple times at Boise. I think that'd be that's a phone call you got to make if you're Boise. If Spencer Danielson were, and just hypothetically, if Spencer Danielson were to get the UCLA job and you're Boise State, you better call Chris Peterson.
Yeah.
You would almost have to. Rob Whitworth, if UCLA wants defense, they want Morgan Scalley. Morgan's not.
Yeah, he's not available though, dude.
He's the next guy.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that, in my opinion, Jay Hill would also be a good take. Nah, I think Jay Hill wants to be the head coach at Utah or BYU. And Jay's had his opportunities to take jobs and he hasn't taken it. And I mean, obviously, with what he did at Weber and what he's doing at BYU, the guy's a phenomenal candidate. I think he wants to be the next guy at BYU. I think that's my opinion. They're just, and I want to be careful with this because I don't want BYU fan tends to lose their shit anytime I say something about Kalani. Nobody believed me when we were talking about, the other jobs he was interviewing for and
Oregon.
I'm telling you something is amiss. I feel like based on the people that I've spoken to in Provo, I don't think he's a lock to stay there as much as everybody believes. Oh, it's his dream job. Yes, it is. Oh, he wants to win there. Totally get it. And he has. Kalani's done what last year represented. I don't think any of us thought we would ever see BYU at that level that quickly. He's done a fantastic job. But there is a burnout factor at BYU. And Bronco Mendenhall is a great example of this. I must have, when I was at the great 1320K fan, the sports leader. I must have asked Bronco that same question 10 times. Anybody know where Bronco Mendenhall is now? Utah State. So it's not that guys want to leave the state of Utah. There is a burnout factor. But the behind the scenes bullshit at BYU is very difficult to deal with. Because, and I'm not talking about the church. Take the church out of it. That's a whole nother thing, right? But Kalani is a very valued member of the LDS community. What I see behind the scenes, the sponsorship stuff, the infighting, I think Tom Homo leaving his position makes it easier for Kalani to leave his position. Kalani can have any job he wants. If he were to make it known that he's available this next cycle, because I'm going to continue to tell you what I hear. This next cycle is going to be bananas. I think there are going to be a lot of P4 jobs open. I think there's maybe a thimble size of jobs that Kalani would even consider.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Kalani can stay at BYU as long as he wants. And I think if the right bait was put in the water, he would bite. And I think it would be very difficult for him not to take an interview at UCLA. I think it'd be very difficult. And I think he knows he can win anywhere he goes. Kalani Sitake knows he can recruit anywhere he goes. Kalani Sitake knows that his system, his style, his demeanor, his humanity, because, and I know I say this every time we talk about Kalani, but it's worth saying, he's a fantastic human being.
How much do you think the Retzloff situation adds to it?
None. Zero. Not even a little.
But you don't think he has any frustration?
None. None. Zero. You knew the rules of engagement. You broke them. You knew it. You went below the hard deck. Guess what?
Yeah, but we're sitting here talking about taking other jobs, dude. The fact is if he was at another school, he wouldn't be dealing with this.
Right, but that's not to me, what I continue to hear about Kalani Sitake is the behind-the-scenes grind that Bronco always hinted at is starting to come to fruition with Kalani. It just gets to a point where you shake your head enough and you turn into a bobblehead. You're like, dude, what are we doing? What is this with this guy? What is this with this partner? What is this with this longtime guy? Why are we treating people like that? One of the things that will drive a person of the faith and integrity of Kalani Sitake out of a position is when the people he values are being treated poorly. And the next time that happens certainly will not be the first time at BYU. And I just think that there is, he will take phone calls. Will he take jobs? That's a totally different thing. If UCLA called Kalani Sitake's agent and said, I want to have a conversation, there would be a conversation. Does that mean that UCLA can land Kalani? No. But interviews happen every year that you never know about. That's how guys get jobs. That's how Deion Sanders ends up at Colorado and you don't even know about it. Right? Because I just think Kalani Sitake is such a gosh darn good dude. That's a good human being. That is a good man. He is. I would send every one of my boys to play for him because I don't care if they ever play a down of football. I just want them exposed to his humanity. I want them exposed to his philosophies because he's a really good dude. And in today's college football world, you just don't see that a lot. So we go back and forth about, about this situation with UCLA. And I am telling you, UCLA is a better job than you guys are giving it credit for. Is it one of the best jobs in the country? No, come on. It absolutely is not. They have the money and the from what I understand, the staff, the administration is ready to win football games and they're ready to do what they have to do to win football games. They're not going to take a risk on a Deshaun Foster type candidate. I think that time is over.
I sure hope so.
Kalani's not going to. No. Phil Venzer. Bronco went to Utah State so he could take care of his mom because this is home. And those of us that have covered Bronco and understand his affinity and his ties to the state of Utah, Bronco Mendenhall never has to work again. He wants to work. And if you look at guys like Kyle Whittingham, do you think his phone hasn't rung his entire career? Kyle Whittingham doesn't want to leave Utah. Right? You look at Kalani. Where did Kalani go? He went to Oregon State. And what happened? He came back. This is a great place to be a football coach. And if you happen to be in the LDS community, it's an even greater place. But the Jake Retzloff thing, that is part and parcel of being at BYU. You signed a document, you agreed to abide by a certain lifestyle. You didn't abide by that lifestyle, and you knew what was going to happen when you did that. You knew. Johnny Gonzalez, the not being able to let your quarterback go to Pound Town at BYU adds to the burnout factor. It does not. I talk about this all the time when these things come up. Guys like Kalani Sitake and Bronco Mendenhall don't run from the honor code. They use it as a recruiting tool. And they win a lot of recruiting battles with it. You look at the dichotomy of talent. Look at guys like the Lassiters. Look at guys like Keelan Marion. Look at Jake Retzloff, the BY Jew. And you can recruit with it. It is a recruiting tool. It is not something to run from. Vegas Kane. Well, I was going to ask, what if BYU were to pay him tithe-free salary? Well, come on. Hypothetically, Kalani goes to UCLA. Would Retzloff leave Tulane? Well, he's got to have eligibility. That's a guy that wants to go play in the NFL. And with the year he's putting together at Tulane, that ship has sailed. I would imagine Kalani could recruit easier at UCLA. The honor code, religion, and location aspect has to play a part in some recruiting. Oh, there are just at BYU, and Jake, I know you know this. At BYU, there are just some recruits you're never going to call.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think there are recruits you're not going to call. I think LA is easier to recruit to than Salt Lake. I don't think that's rocket science. I think that there are kids who want to go to BYU for the academic standard and for life after football. I think there are kids who want to go to BYU for the culture. I mean, some of you don't really understand that or understand how that's possible, but I promise you, there are a lot of people who want to be in that culture and want to live that lifestyle. And that's
Absolutely.
part of, that's part of the recruiting pitch for football. But I guess look, what this comes down to, number one for Kalani is where he's at in life and what's going to be best for his family and what does his family really want to do? Because he doesn't have to leave BYU.
No.
He could leave BYU. Obviously, that option's on the table. I still have a really hard time thinking for Kalani that UCLA makes sense just based on what they haven't done the last 10 years. And I know administration's saying that they're ready to do what it takes, and that's great. But the reality is, for a guy like Kalani, the next move has to be a move that opens the door to a national championship, because you have that on some level at BYU, but I don't think that the path is a little bit more difficult at BYU than it would be at just a regular old fashioned university, right? A non-religious institution.
I don't look, I want to be clear. I don't think Kalani Sitake is looking to leave BYU. But I think, because you hear Kalani talk about the dream job, you hear Kalani talk about, because he played at BYU, like he's a Lavelle guy, like, but I'm telling you that behind the scenes dealings, issues are more significant than they have ever been.
Do you think that the behind the scenes stuff is more prevalent at BYU than it would be at, whatever, I guess UCLA in this case, or like, whatever?
Well, it depends on what you believe. Well, first of all, what's behind the scenes at BYU is always a power struggle. There are tons of egos, tons of money being fought over who's this and who's that, and is this my guy or your guy, or a ton of that. The politics behind the scenes at BYU are enough to drive you crazy. But when you look at, it's what you believe about UCLA, because their messaging has completely changed 180 degrees from what it was. UCLA is, again, I'll continue to tell you, they have one of the best brand deals in all of college athletics. They're getting 7.7 a year from Jordan Brand. And I think UCLA is starting to figure out they're not leveraging the Big Ten the way they should be leveraging the Big Ten. They're looking at USC struggling and still making exponentially more money. I think they're looking at one of the things, again, and I'm almost tired of talking about it, the Department of Education being eliminated has crippled a lot of universities. And I think UCLA is starting to look at the writing on the wall. Now, they're a UC school, obviously, UCLA. That's a UC school, so their funding stuff is very interesting. But if their administrators and their boosters are on board, they're talking about making UCLA one of the best paying jobs in the country. If that is in fact the case, that right there signals to you that UCLA is playing games very differently now.
But I think they need to do that. See, that's what I'm talking about. It needs to be one of the best paying jobs in the, like, they need to take that step. If look, and this doesn't just apply to UCLA, but it's them, because we're talking about this job opening. Like, if you're a program that hasn't been winning a lot and hasn't been relevant, and basically you're asking someone to come in and build the program up from basically scraps at this point, like, you need to pay them well. You need to fund that program.
But listen, it's not scraps. This is, and I hope people understand this. UCLA has not purposefully has not invested in winning college football games. But if you look at that athletic department, it's not like they don't have trophies in every case. That's a successful athletic department. From basketball, certainly, to baseball, to that's an athletic department that's well funded. They now have football people in place. And one of the interesting things, and I continue to hit this drum, college football is turning into the NFL. And UCLA is going to put an infrastructure in place that the new head coach is going to have a role in filling. So they're going to hire a general manager. They're one of the roles that most college football teams now are hiring for is analysts, because you usually don't have analysts at the college level, right? So you usually have, historically, it's always been a tape guy who cuts your tape and analyzes it, and the coach hands him a sheet and says, hey, look for these 20 things in this particular. You're going to have an entire staff now that is dedicated to analyzing things like quality control. And who has set the bar for that? Deion Sanders at Colorado. And I think you're going to see people like UCLA are going to mimic what Colorado's doing because they put infrastructure in place. The coach is no longer the lead recruiter in the very best recruiting programs. The coach is not the lead. He's the closer. Historically, they've always been the beginning and the end. Now Deion Sanders is a closer. Guys like Kalani Sitake, who have a guy like Jay Hill. Jay Hill does a lot more of the legwork. They're recruiting coordinators. That's what UCLA has never invested in. So UCLA now is saying, hey, coach, we're going to give you this salary structure to expand your staff. And you're going to be able to hire a GM who's going to be able to hire analysts, who's going to be able to, all of that UCLA has never done. They're putting the money forward to do that now. And if that is the case, it is not bare bones, because one of the things that you have to remember is just in Los Angeles, Arizona, and Nevada on their own, you can build football teams that will win national championships, from linebackers to quarterbacks to wide receivers. You're going to have to go somewhere else probably to find the best offensive linemen. But where do those guys come from? Utah puts out a ton of awesome linemen. So my point is, it's not, all I'm saying is it is not bare bones. I think that's really important. It is not bare bones. They're finally doing business at UCLA for football.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, yeah. I think the optics are not great. That's all I would say.
Well,
So.
I think you have to tell that story, right? You have to let you, and I think UCLA is doing a good job of this already. UCLA is already telling people, hey, we know that we haven't done what needs to be done. That's why we're going to pay you this crazy amount. And we're going to give you a war chest to hire an entire infrastructure. And we have a ton of NIL money through Nike, through the Jordan brand. So their NIL money is in place. And you're going to be able to completely strip that thing down and start from the bottom up. And I think that excites a lot of coaches at a place like UCLA. I think that excites a lot of people. And I think one of the things that, like, you look around the Big 12 right now, this is a great conversation. You look around the Big 12 right now. How many universities are doing that?
Well, Kansas is the latest one, right? I mean,
Like, just
stadium renovation, buying in more,
big boosters. There's only 2 or 3 that are really doing it. BYU's leading the way across all of athletics. Texas Tech is probably 1A or 1B. Let's say Texas Tech is 1A, BYU is 1B, right? And then if you look at the other programs in the Big 12 that are finally starting to spend real money, Utah's the other one that's spending real money on athletics now. And there's an edict in the Utah athletic department. If you don't win, you're not going to be here. And I think, go back to what we talked about last year. They fired the basketball coach the moment they were eliminated from any kind of consideration for postseason. They fired the basketball coach. And it's a shot over the bow of athletics at Utah. And so you start to kind of look around this conference. It's very interesting, the money that's being spent at Kansas. It's very interesting, the games that are being won in Ames, because they're not spending a ton of money on NIL at Ames. They simply are not. And they're still winning games, and they're still in the driver's seat in this conference. There's only a handful of teams that are doing it. Baylor is spending horrendously low amounts of money. I would love to see TCU invest more money in talent. The problem is now you're in the state of Texas, you're in an arms race between Texas and Texas Tech. And I don't know how you win that, because as much money as it apparently seems that A&M has, they don't have nearly the talent that Texas has. And I look at I look at Baylor. Again, why are you going to hire Dave Aranda, who's done nothing with NIL?
No idea.
That'd be like hiring Mike Gundy to revamp your NIL. You're not going to do that.
That's what I'm saying. The hire has to be great. It's got to be a no doubt about it guy. It can't be, it can't be anybody with, risk. I mean, obviously there are pros and cons to every hire, but it just can't be a questionable hire. And I guess, look, I think that the latest case of building back from wherever they are now, however you want to describe where they are now, I think ASU is a good case study of that. Obviously the college football playoff run, leaving the Herm Edwards era behind, that whole thing. I mean, ASU is a good case study. Tech,
yep.
I think Tech is still a big question mark. They're spending their ass off, and that paid off for them in softball. But will it pay off for them in football?
That's just this year, though, that started. Like, if you look at historically, isn't Iowa State the top NIL spender in the conference historically? Like, I mean, they're the ones that had been, I want to say it's like Iowa State, Kansas, and if I'm not mistaken, like K-State is third in that. Utah was fourth in that. Like, let that sink in, that Utah was top 5 in the Big 12 in spending. That's how bad the Big 12's NIL spending was. So you start to look at now who's really spending. Well, now you're starting to see that Colorado, who was lower level in NIL spending, now is coming up because they have this unbelievable infrastructure in place. Now you have to go and recruit, right? Because Travis and Shedeur are gone. So you look at the way that this conference is changing, and you look at the fact that Clemson is a $12 to $15 million a year NIL school, or you look at that man. I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure, doesn't Ohio State spend $22 million this year in NIL? Pretty sure, and I think the bottom of the Big Ten is, I want to say Rutgers at like $2.9 million. That's the swing in the Big Ten, 20 to 2.9. UCLA, when we talk about bare bones, UCLA isn't bare bones. They're now allocating money to football. So, and that doesn't even account for the fact that you're in the Big Ten. I think your average NIL budget is $10 million a year. I mean, think about the difference in that. If you're Kalani Sitake going from BYU to an average of $10 million a year, like that is crazy.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying, when I say bare bones, I'm not saying that to say they don't have money. It's UCLA. They have money. Like, that's not really like, you have money. What my main point is like, is there's a difference between having money and winning, and having money and just like not being sure how to kind of put that whole thing together. And
I would agree.
And that's what seems to have been the issue. And I understand for UCLA, it's complex financially. I totally understand. It's not, it's different, obviously, school to school. UCLA has particular challenges that they've been working with. And I understand. It's a fairer thing to say, hey, we haven't been trying to win. Okay, well, great. I understand that. But again, there's a difference of, hey, we haven't been trying to win, but now we're trying to win. And what does that process look like to actually go out and be a factor? No one's asking you to go out and win national championships, right? Like, all we're asking is that you're competitive in the Big Ten, right? Like, just be in, like, just be like, dude, if UCLA was the Auburn of the Big Ten, like, you would be phenomenal, right? You would be in the college football playoff conversation most of the year. Maybe you don't get in, but you're in every game. Like, you're right there. Like, that's all UCLA needs to be, in my opinion, to be successful, because they are in LA. They would be a really sexy candidate as far as TV providers are concerned. Like, a good UCLA team. Like, I remember the UCLA Utah game. What was that? Last year, 2 years ago. That was like a huge game. Like, people were about that game. So I'm not saying they don't have money. What I'm saying is that you in terms of what candidate you're going to get, you have to do a good job selling the vision and the path of how exactly it is that you intend to make UCLA a competitive destination when you're down the street from SC. And I think that's their biggest challenge to winning more games and to becoming that program that they want to become. That's why I think if you're UCLA, Kalani's super attractive, because obviously he's been recruiting the LA market and the West Coast for a decade now, or however the hell long it's been.
And I was reminded that UCLA put Deshaun Foster on notice, like, dude, because you guys got the financial picture at UCLA is difficult. They've been so bad in football that I want to say that they've lost $200 and something million over the last several years on football. And they were given in I think in February, they were given $30 million. So the money is there. And that's why when you start the way they started, you had to fire him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had no choice. I mean, they have money and what I meant to say is it was pointed out to me, it's not like they're in debt or they're struggling financially. They're losing money because of football. And you're just in the current climate with the way that the Department of Education was gutted and funds are not being distributed, especially to California universities. You can't afford to lose in football anymore. So I think that's why this change has happened. All right, let's get some of your comments. Mike Smith. I'm just upset that the Pro Mountain West SEC podcast is talking about former Pac team in the Big Ten. There you go. There you go. John Famlor, how far is Diego Pavia going to be from suing Tav Vincent? Well, he did announce today that this is his last year. Who are you, Cam?
Yeah.
I mean, he was asking for a 7th year of eligibility. Yeah, he lost. He announced that today. The eye patch. It's going to be amusing to watch TDS soak money into their football and basketball programs and find zero gratification. They're running circles around Utah. Why would they? They've already had a better run in football than Utah's had. So I don't know where you're getting that ridiculousness. Baylor is spending money, but not in football. They spend money on basketball. Well, they're also private, so you don't get their financial disclosures. They're not spending money on football. They're not at all. It would be interesting if a lot of colleges go for 5'11" or shorter guys with no shot at the NFL for infinite eligibility. I don't think that's happening. They need to be thrown. They need to thrown the legal book at that kid, but for some reason, I have a sneaky feeling he will get a deal to be. I have no idea.
He's talking about the Kirk situation.
Come on, man. Pat Fitzgerald's final record at Northwestern. You don't sue your school and get new jobs. I think Pat's going to struggle to find a good job. That's going to be tough. Are you mentioning him for UCLA? I think that would be almost impossible. I don't know that you can't do that. I don't see any way to do that. Hey, player, Utah plays. Do you think I don't know that? What are you talking about? There are only 7 schools with 15 plus NAL budgets for men's basketball. Texas Tech and BYU are the only 2 from the Big 12. And that's why I say when I have conversations about money in the Big 12, Colorado's very interesting in that they do not spend a lot of money in NIL. And I'm curious how many Big 12 teams will break the $10 million barrier in football in the next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference is Colorado doesn't necessarily have to because they have Dion and they have that staff.
Well, that might be true, but kids want to make money. And I think we'll see. I think there's a lot to that, but kids want to make money. But that's just me. Kreggers, what would be the bigger worry for Utah? Lose a close, low-score game to Tech 12-9 or win a 42-41 high-scoring game? Well, you want to play the 42-41 because I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to keep Barron Morton and those wide receivers down. Barron looks, and if you've watched this show for any amount of time, I'm a huge Barron Morton fan. He looks so good right now. I worry a little bit about their level of competition to this point. It's such a big jump up on the line play from what Texas Tech has seen to what Utah is. It's such a significant jump. And I think when you're playing and practicing down and then you have to take this big jump forward, that's very difficult to do. And I think that's a huge question. I was looking at some of the matchups on the Utah defensive line because I think Utah's offensive line is significantly better than Texas Tech's defensive line. I think Utah's got the best offensive line in the country, in my opinion. I look at that defensive line for Texas Tech. I don't think they haven't had time to coach those guys up to that level. So I expect Utah to control the line of scrimmage. The question will be, can Devin Dampier raise his game throwing the football to not, he doesn't even have to meet Barron Morton. He just has to have the best game he's ever played at quarterback. And we've seen him do that pretty considerably at Utah. Can he keep doing that every week? Can he have the best game of his life every week? Certainly not. This is not the week to prove that. He needs to have the best game he's ever played. Long-term, UCLA needs their own football stadium near campus. It's never going to happen. That is not even possible. It's not even a consideration. It just is not. It sucks they are stuck at the Rose Bowl until 2044. They could build something. No, they can't. When their lease is up, then start. No, they can't. I know you consider yourself a stadium guy. There is no scenario where UCLA is going to build a stadium on campus. If you understand Westwood and the footprint and the land valuations in Southern California, it makes no financial sense for UCLA to build something. One, because they don't have the land to do it. Because if you start looking at the UCLA footprint, and I'll show you a visual of it here in a second if I can find the map that I want. If you start looking at their footprint, there's no way to. There's just no way to do it.
Yeah, I just don't know where you're going to put it.
Well, the problem is that you're so limited because everything around them is built. And if you start looking at, and I can't find the map that I want to find. But if you start looking at the footprint that they have, there's no room on campus. That is a non-starter. That's just not going to happen. But what you begin to understand is the Rose Bowl needs to be dramatically improved. And unfortunately, there's no way to really do that will benefit UCLA because the campus, and again, if you don't know anything about UCLA, they're big into things like UCLA Medical. So UCLA Health. They have a building, I think it's called the Morton Medical Building, which is ever expanding. They have they just have like on campus, like Pauley Pavilion. Pauley Pavilion's been on campus for how long? I mean, so you look at their footprint and then you understand that, okay, well, everybody always says, well, why don't they build up to the freeway? Well, because the LA National Cemetery is right on the freeway and borders the UCLA campus. Well, can't do that. You understand that things like Wilshire Boulevard, they're on, what are they? They're Westwood Boulevard and Wilshire Boulevard on one side. And I can pull it up, and it's like sunset to Wilshire Boulevard, and then Holmby Hills and Holmby Park surrounded by the LA Country Club and the LA National Cemetery on the other side. Like there's nowhere you're not building on that campus. You're not building near that campus. You're talking about $1 billion when you start looking at, like, do you understand the property value in the Holmby Hills? I mean, do you understand like Sunset Boulevard North? Forget it. That's not you. The problem also is that you start looking at where Pasadena is, dude. It's at certain times it's 90 minutes from Westwood, an hour and a half from Westwood. I think what could be more reasonable would be to do something at SoFi, or that could be more reasonable, but I doubt they'll ever leave the Rose Bowl. UCLA is in more debt than Rutgers. Well, UCLA is not in debt. UCLA is running at a deficit. And again, when you are when you look at where the money at UCLA as a university is, it's not in sports. And you start to understand that UCLA is a prolific earner. When you look at they're an R1 research institution, you got to remember that. That they're a doctoral university with incredible production and medical research. That's where all their money is, right? And they're a Carnegie University as well, which gives them access to unbelievable grants. Like, they're not in debt. They're running at a deficit in athletics. And the issue is going to be, how do you fix that? And what do you do to make more money in athletics? Well, you win football games.
Yep.
And you start winning big football games. You need to beat USC every year, which is going to be tough because that's a good program. You need to win the Big Ten championship in the next 5 years, in my opinion. And I think you absolutely need to play a big role in the renovation process at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
and
I think you need to be a program that people want to be a part of, like a football program that people are like, hey, yeah, UCLA, they're really good. They're competing for Big Ten championships. They're going to the college football playoff. You know, that's a really valuable program. It's LA. Like, what's not to love? I mean, the advantage is, you know, for UCLA is that the story quickly can change. I mean, it's easier for UCLA to become a relevant program than it would be for Stanford or Oregon State, right?
Yes.
So that's their advantage. But everyone focuses on the stadium thing, dude. The stadium thing will get worked out, dude. They'll figure it out. Like that's just one piece of the puzzle. The more important thing right now is finding a reasonable head coach who can do what you need him to do, and competing for a Big Ten championship in the next 5 years. And honestly, if you really want to get down to it, being a team that is prepared and ready to go when the new entity gets created, and you actually need to be winning football games. Like, that's what needs to happen.
Yep. Backwood greater than Westwood. You know. Oliva, LA Coliseum is too close to Westwood, so USC and UCLA in the same area arena wouldn't. No. You wouldn't play at the Coliseum. They're not going to leave the Rose Bowl. They're not going to leave. They have a long-term relationship. Like, I think their lease is through 2044. Like, you're not going to do that. Chad Perling, UCLA is paying Cal's athletic department $10 million the next 3 years. It's referred to as Calimony. Yeah, through 26, 27. That's part of their deal for splitting in the Pac-10, 12 thing. You know,
whatever we're referring to it as.
Yeah. Mike Smith. Some areas are just limited for real estate. One of the things the Big 12 wanted West Virginia to commit to is a larger airport, just not the property for it due to the mountainous areas. Yeah. And when you look at these historical places, it's Cal. Cal's a great example of this. The money that they put into renovating their stadium at Cal, like, dude, I guess I can look that up. Like, it's it's a beautiful stadium now. But it is, my God, Like the money they spent on Memorial Stadium, it is $321 million. $321 million. Like that's wild. And the biggest issue, you got to remember at Cal, like they had, aren't they on the Hayward Fault in Berkeley? And like it was like it was so expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they'll ever make that money back. But, Chewy Gonzalez going to the game this Saturday, going to tailgate with mimosas, kegs, and eggs, dude.
Nice, dude.
Let's get into it because this is something that really bothers me. Listen, I understand the big noon kickoff is a big viewership window. But is it Texas and Ohio State big window? When you have Texas Tech and Utah playing? Or would Texas Tech and Utah be better in primetime? Jake, is it disrespectful to have this game kick off at 10 a.m.?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not. It's obviously not ideal. It's obviously not what you want. Everyone's defending it, saying that because Big Noon Kickoff is taking this game that it's a big deal, and while that is a plus, I guess I just feel like it should be a primetime game. Like it's one of the biggest games of the year in college football. It's one of the biggest games of the year in the Big 12. And ultimately I just think that, you're not in primetime because maybe you haven't earned that. Maybe that's just not what these two teams command yet. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how else to describe this situation, because ultimately, like, one of these teams, like, to me, this is basically an elimination game. Like, whoever loses this game is going to have the edge on the other team when we get down to the end of the season and we're playing the, hey, who's going to the Big 12 championship game. So to me, the implications are sky high. For me, the implications are more impactful than what we had with Texas and Ohio State, mainly because Texas and Ohio State are both going to have to really screw it up not to get into the CFP. Whereas these two teams are playing with a ton to lose. I mean, again, the loser of this game is going to be in a really tough tough spot to get into the CFP unless they can figure out a way to get into the Big 12 championship game and get the auto bid. And that's why I say, like, it might be strong to say it's disrespectful, but ultimately, like, I can make a pretty compelling case that there's more to lose in this game than there was in the Texas and Ohio State game, really without a doubt.
I think my argument here is that I don't believe, and this is my opinion, I don't believe that Big Noon Kickoff is the right venue for this game. I think that when I look at Utah and Texas Tech, this should be a night game. It should be, at the very least, it should be a 1:30 game, in my opinion. I understand that people are excited about the fact that Big Noon Kickoff's coming and it's the biggest TV window. I don't even argue with that. But when I look at the way that their games have historically been, my opinion is that you're not going to get the Texas-Ohio number. Okay, well, let's throw that number out. Are you going to get the biggest name? I don't think you're going to. Are you going to be, is it going to be the Utah USC game? Remember that back, what was that, 5-6 years ago? I don't think it is. And my biggest concern is this is not going to be, are 5 million people going to tune into this game? Do we believe that 5 million people will watch Texas Tech and Utah? Because what's going to be the narrative when it's not 6.5, 7 million people? What's going to be the...
Yeah, I mean, the narrative is going to be that it's the Big 12 and nobody cares. That's what the narrative is going to be. I think that I do think it'll draw 5. I think like 7 to 8 is pushing it for sure. I think that the obviously the advantage is it's the first game, right? Big noon kickoff, like big game. It's on Big Fox, obviously. Like, so like that's the advantage. But again, this is where the streaming on 872 different networks comes into play, and what people really want to watch. If you're not interested in the Big 12, you'll find the SEC. You will, one way or the other through ESPN. So, this is for some people, I imagine, like if you're, I mean, let's say that you're, you're a Penn State fan, right? Pedo State. Like, you're not interested in watching this game on Fox. You're probably going to find a Big Ten matchup,
Does it
So,
outdraw Iowa State, which was 4.2 million people?
yeah, I think it would outdraw that. Yeah.
It better. And that's the thing that I worry about, because I look at, it's not doing the 16 million or whatever it was that Texas Ohio State did. And I don't even think that it needs to. The thing that I worry about is this does a $4 to $5 million number, or 4 to 5 million viewer number. That's not good. That's not good at all. And these two teams are supposed to be compelling teams that are playing, essentially are competing for a spot in the college football playoff in this game. And if I look at Fox's later window numbers, I understand it's significantly less, but why is this game? And this is my point. Why is this not the ESPN 5:30 game? Why is this not that's what I really struggle with. I want to understand, why does it not get the ABC window that Notre Dame and Miami got?
Well, listen, I mean, I think it didn't get that, because like if you look at the schedule, just the college football schedule overall, and like who's where and what time they're playing and all that. I mean, it's clearly the most compelling matchup in the window, right? I mean,
in early, it's not. I don't even think it's the best matchup of the week. You think this is the best game of the week?
I think it's the best. It's the best matchup in the early window. If you look at the 9 a.m. kicks, and like 9 a.m., 9:45, 10, like
sure, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
So like I think that's why Fox wanted it to be their game, because they feel like, hey, well, there's not a lot of other matchups, and this is what people are going to watch. And we're trying to produce a number.
You're telling me that you can't have TCU SMU. You're telling me that you can't there, bro. I think Oregon State. What time is it? I think that's a 1:00 kickoff. Why? Look, I'm not trying to downgrade this matchup at all. I'm telling you it belongs in prime time. I'm telling you this is a night game. I am telling you that this belongs in that later window. That Miami and the Miami Notre Dame window is the one I'm talking about. I think that kicked off at 7:30 Eastern. On ABC, and it did 10.8 million viewers, if my memory serves. That's the window this game belongs in. National TV, primetime, Saturday night, ABC.
Well, that window for Fox is ASU and Baylor.
Well, but you can move those games around.
No, I know. That's what I'm just saying.
It's not, this is not, none of this is written in stone. These are decisions that were made. And in my opinion, this is a bad decision, because at that hour, it's going to do 4 million people. Because it's going to do 4 million people, man. And I understand that Utah fan comes to the TV at 10 in the morning. We're doing this at 10 in the morning in Salt Lake City. Why? Why is this? Why? I feel like that is a downgrade. And people are, 6 million viewers. If this game gets 6 million viewers, I will sit here and happily eat crow over it. I just don't see it doing that, because just because you put a game on Fox at noon Eastern doesn't mean that people are going to watch it. That's the sad reality of Iowa State is they got outdrawn by Michigan, Oklahoma. Which was, again, 7:30 on ABC, that did twice as many viewers as Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that the big noon kickoff is somehow this rock solid absolute that's going to draw a big number. This game deserves to be in primetime at night under the lights with a Saturday night crowd watching it on ABC. That's where this game belongs. And it is disappointing to me. And this week actually has, in my opinion, you look at some of the matchups in the top 25. I think there's some really good games. I think that without question, Oregon State's a big game. I think Oklahoma-Auburn's a big game. That game's 1:30 in the afternoon on ABC. 3:30 Eastern, 1:30 Mountain Time. Why is that not Utah? No idea. When I look at like Ole Miss Tulane is a really good game at 3:30 on ESPN. I look at Michigan Nebraska. That's a really big game. I think this is a huge game for both Michigan and Nebraska. 3:30 Eastern on CBS. It makes no sense to me when you have good matchups that you could put on Big Noon Kickoff. You could be at Memorial Stadium for Michigan and Nebraska. There is no question in my mind that you could be doing Florida and Miami on Big Noon Kickoff, but you're not doing that. There's no question in my mind you could be doing Illinois and Indiana, but you're not doing that. You chose to take you took one of the best teams in the Big 12 and forced them to kick off at 10 in the morning in their home stadium. To me, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea, and it's going to get a $4 million viewership number, and I think it is. I think it is going to be incredibly disappointing number wise.
Maybe it will. Maybe it will.
This game should do. This is a game that should do 6, 7, 8 million views, and it will do 4 or 5. And it's because of where they placed it, in my opinion, which is a huge mistake. So, I guess I can bitch and moan about it, and my guess is nobody cares, which they don't. So
yeah, I mean, I just think it's difficult. Like overall, like I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I mean, I think that I don't know. Part of me wonders, like, is this, like I don't know what the thought for Fox was, other than, hey, like they must have thought that, hey, well, it's Tech in Utah, for Big Noon Kickoff, and we're going to dominate that time slot. That's the only thing I could think that they were. That's the play if you're not going to have this game in prime time.
But
it can't be anything else.
But this is two smaller brands nationally. These are two small. Texas Tech and Utah are smaller brands on a national scale.
Yeah, but you're putting them on the biggest, the biggest channel, basically. Like, it's not hard to find. People are definitely going to run into that.
But did people find Iowa State? Did they run into that?
Yeah.
No, they didn't at 4 million. But okay. I guess we're just going to agree to disagree.
I'm having a conversation about what they must have thought. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm trying to talk about like what they might have been thinking with this decision.
Yeah, whatever it was, I hate it. I hate it, in my opinion. Utah, Texas Tech should be a 7 Central on ABC. This is going to be a great football game to watch. I don't have any doubt that this is going to be a great football game to watch. I have no doubt in my mind. No doubt whatsoever. And we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. People might be upset with Big Noon Kickoff for this game, but it really is a good slot, and the best game at the time gets the East Coast voters to actually watch the game. I don't think they will. In my opinion, if you're on the East Coast and it is noon, and you flip on the TV and you have, let's say, an SEC game, or you can go watch Utah and Texas Tech. Are you going to watch Tennessee and UAB or Arkansas, Memphis? I don't think anybody on the East Coast gives a rat's ass what happens in Salt Lake City.
No, I think what you're doing, if you're an East Coaster, you're building your day around Florida and Miami. That's what I think you're doing.
And the crazy part is doesn't Texas play like Sam Houston or somebody this week? Yeah, the Longhorns play Sam Houston at DKR. That game is an 8 Eastern kickoff. Like, have you no forethought to this? How important the state of Texas is to TV viewership in college football? It's wild. To me, it is a slap in the face, and you are essentially saying these two brands are smaller. That's what you're saying. Now, hang on. Which brands most move the viewership needle? The major broadcasts are playing the now game than the long game with regard to the best football product at the best TV product. Yeah. And I would tell you Nebraska, Michigan. I think that's a game that East Coast viewers will watch. Nebraska, Michigan is a game that in my opinion, will do significantly bigger numbers on CBS at 3:30. Significantly, but I have no doubt about it. Nebraska's got a big fan base. Michigan's got a big fan base. I think it's an incredibly important game for Bryce Underwood. I think that's going to get that'll be the 6-7 million viewer game. I think that'll be the ratings winner of the weekend. I think Miami and Florida will do a big number. I have no doubt about that. But if we're looking at big numbers, like I think Oregon State is on the Big Ten network, so that won't do a big number. What's the NBC Big Ten game? Oh, Maryland and Wisco. Will Maryland and Wisconsin at the exact same time on NBC outdraw Utah and Texas Tech on Fox? It's an interesting question.
We'll see.
Does Notre Dame and Purdue outdraw Utah and Texas Tech?
Yeah.
Because what is Notre Dame? 1:30, I think we play on NBC. Because that's at the stadium. I think pretty certainly, I think there's a real good chance that 0-2 Notre Dame versus Purdue outdraws Texas Tech, Utah. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I am wrong. I really do. I doubt you would get any more viewers at 3:30, and they would get even less viewers as a night game when you are competing Florida-Miami. But my point is, I think you have to put games in the right windows at the right times to maximize viewership. And that big noon kickoff number has shown when you put a big matchup, Texas, Ohio State did whatever, 16 million views or something stupid like that. It'll get a big number.
What matchup then? If you're saying they need a big matchup, what matchup would you put in there instead? Because
I think Florida Miami is a really good one. Again, I think Michigan Nebraska will get a huge number. I don't have any doubt about that. That would have been a great big noon kickoff. I think there's a lot of ways you could have gone. I think that Florida Miami game. I just look at these games and I say to myself, who did they have access to? They didn't have access to Florida and Miami. So but I don't think there is any doubt that they could have put Michigan, Nebraska in that window, but we'll find out. The proof will be in the pudding. I'm going to be heartbroken if this game does 4 million views.
I mean, it's definitely a good measure for the Big 12. I mean, I definitely think it's a good measure for the Big 12.
That would be an absolute travesty for the Big 12 if this game does 4 million views. Michigan, Nebraska seems like a bore fest to me. I actually think it's going to be a really good game. And I think it's another opportunity for Bryce Underwood to have a coming out party because he has been terrible. Terrible.
Well, he should fare better against Nebraska than Oklahoma, obviously.
Well, you would hope so, right? I think this is a really important stretch of games for him. I think it is really, really important that he does well. I don't even know how much more. I don't even know how much more I can emphasize. I think they need him desperately to grow, and I mean grow quickly, because he has not been good. And it is going to be really tough. It is going to be really tough when you start looking at where he sits. I mean, he's just not been good in my opinion. So we'll see. I don't know. It's all a matter of who watches and who doesn't, right? That's
I also
the
think that the hard part is it's such a philosophical conversation. Like, obviously, you have your thoughts on why it shouldn't be there, and Fox has their thoughts as to why it should be there, right? I mean, I think that the other thing I think Fox battles in deciding what games to take is, are they just going to take a Big Ten game every single week for big noon kickoff? Like, are you literally just going to take whoever Michigan's playing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I
yeah.
think it's difficult because there's such a swing in caliber of game. I mean, obviously, I think it's a ridiculous comparison, not even just for this Big 12 matchup, but just any game to compare it to the Texas Ohio State game, mainly because that was the first game of the year. Everyone was pumped about it. Like, I just think it's obviously a matchup made for TV, and I think that the Texas Tech Utah game, two teams that obviously have a lot on the line. I think, you can market the hell out of that game, but I don't know. It's hard because if this was two teams that we were like, oh yeah, these are two teams that everyone cares about, we wouldn't even really be having this conversation. But it's two teams that we're not really sure what the East Coast thinks about these two teams. That's the reality of it. You don't know how East Coaster is going to respond to this game being here. I'm inclined to think that the East Coaster would probably be building their day around Miami and Florida later in the day. I mean, that's like because when I look at the college football schedule, my first question is there a game on that prevents me from golfing in the morning? And if there is, like there is this week, I'm not golfing, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that. Hey, like, is there an early matchup to where I can't get my Costco run in, my golf in, whatever it is that you do on your Saturday mornings? And I think that would be the best way to categorize it or characterize it for viewership. Does this game make people go out of their way to watch it? Like, is this a matchup where you're like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm going to brave Costco at 2:00 so I can watch Utah and Tech all the way through. That's what I think is really the conundrum. That's what's difficult. Because again, if you don't have access, and I agree, you didn't have access to the Florida Miami game, your swap would have
Right.
been ASU and Baylor, I think, right? I mean, obviously you have pick of other games, but if you were really looking to have a Big 12 matchup, and not a Big 10 matchup, that would have been the other play.
Yeah.
So, and I just don't think that that's good enough.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
what's hard.
see. We'll see. I don't know. I understand why people are excited to have big noon kickoff. If this game does less than 5 million views, I think it's a huge loss, but we'll see. Because I think the Big 12 is in a really critical point. I think when you look at the games this weekend, I think that it'd be nice if Oklahoma State won a football game ever. I think Arizona State needs to go to Waco and win the game.
I knew today would be shitty.
That's going to be a huge game in my opinion. I think you look at BYU and East Carolina, huge football game. SMU, TCU has got to beat SMU. That game is at Carter and Fort Worth. You've got to win that game. And I thought West Virginia's win last weekend was a massive win for this conference. I thought it was huge. I think Colorado's got to beat Wyo this weekend. That's a night game. ESPN, national TV at Folsom. You got to win that game, man. Like it's huge. So I think this is a really big weekend for the Big 12. I think they have got to start winning games of consequence. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. Hard to have any game rival the Ohio State-Texas game, both ranked at the top to start college play. I think that's right. Bryce looked uncomfortable the whole Oklahoma game because Sharon Moore is not a good coach.
We told you he would look uncomfortable. We told you that Brent Venables would make his life difficult.
His numbers, if we're just being honest, his numbers are really, really bad. And I think you are in a world of hurt when you look at the numbers on on him. Michigan's got a long road. This cat's not even completing 60% of his passes. And the bigger issue is he's only got 2 touchdown passes. Second issue is he's only averaging 7.8 yards a completion, which, while not the worst, Preston Stone it's either Preston Stone or Gronowski at Iowa are the worst. But there's just nothing to hang on to with Bryce Underwood at this point. Nothing. I think he's being horribly coached. We have seen regression against better teams. I think Sharon Moore. I honestly think if Sharon Moore hadn't gotten a show cause, he'd be gone after this season, because they are really bad. They are really, really poorly, fundamentally speaking, play calling, understanding, systems, schematics. Michigan's terrible right now. They are really, really, really poorly coached.
And you know, the shame of it is that I think if Bryce Underwood was with someone who could develop him and was with a quarterback, a quarterback guy, like, I actually think he would be really good. I actually think he has a lot of talent. I think that the running and his size versus his athletic ability and ability to run, plus his arm is a really good combination. The problem is that he lacks touch at a really high, like, he just lacks a ton of touch on his pass. He is having to run a ton because he doesn't trust what he sees. And I would agree that he does not seem prepared yet. Now, part of that is he's young, but I think the bigger part of it is I agree, he's not getting quality coaching, and
he's not getting better.
Yeah,
he's not getting
that's
better.
The thing, right? Like, and that's why I say, like, you should fare better this week. Like, you should look better this week. I mean, it's going to be a competitive game. I don't think you can just take Michigan to win this, no problem. But
no, I think if it were, in my opinion, I think you'd be looking at Nebraska to win this game. It's at Memorial. Like, I think at some point, and I think one of the biggest numbers to pay attention to is Bryce Underwood's rushing numbers against Nebraska. He was really, really bad running the football against New Mexico and Oklahoma. Central Michigan is just so woefully untalented. I don't know how you take anything he did in that game.
Yeah, you damn well better play good against them.
And he threw an interception that was not great. And again, when you average 37.5% completion against Brent Venables in Oklahoma, you are poorly prepared. I don't care who you are. Jake, you'd convert more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, but their Michigan is really poorly coached.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, I don't even know how to say that. Like, K. Nurin, Bear reminds me of Steve Young. Bear who? Bear Bryant? Bear Bryant and Steve Young. Or how does Bear Bryant remind you of Steve Young?
No, I'm assuming he's talking about Bear Bachmeier.
No, he can't be talking about Bear Bachmeier. Bear Bachmeier can't throw a pass at the P4 level. I don't know how you could be saying that would be one of the dumbest things ever uttered on this show.